Hey Squidlets, just finished riding a wonderful ride out here in Southern California. The weather's getting a lot cooler in these hills, so I decided I'm gonna start a video series where I could share my wisdom that I've gathered over the last few years that I've been riding. Wisdom that I've, taken from other more experienced riders. And I want to show everyone, talk about the expense of owning a motorcycle, some of the things you should think about before you purchase a motorcycle. Maybe you already purchased a motorcycle, some of the things you should consider learning to make having one of these a lot more affordable. Realistically, for a lot of us, we should not have a money pit like this. I mean, there's very few people in the motorcycle world that I think, oh, these guys have money. They could afford this hobby without even having to think about it. But if tires are coming up for your motorcycle and you're dreading it, trying to think, oh, that's going to be hard, you probably can't afford one. What I mean by you can't afford one is obviously you can afford one, you probably have one already. But as far as every financial advisor out there, they'll tell you if you don't have the excess income to purchase this hobby, which for I would say 99% of people living in America, this is a hobby. Most of us have different means of transportation, particularly a car, because it's riding a motorcycle is a really tough work. A lot of people, try to commute in their motorcycles, and I really commend them because it's really tough work to get out of your house wearing your gear, wearing your jacket, wearing your helmet, wearing all the safety gear that you usually should be wearing. But a lot of commuters won't do that because it again, it's a lot of work for people to commute with that. Um, so again, we tend to have other means to transport ourselves, usually another car. So motorcycles tend to be our hobby vehicle. Um, Anyways, all this to say, it's an expensive hobby that a lot of us might not be able to afford. Um, we make the financial decision to do it anyways. But having said that, there's a lot of things that you could do and learn to make your motorcycle ownership experience a lot more affordable. Things like learning how to lube your chain. I know a few people that they started off by taking their chain to get it lubed by someone else, or they would just not lube their chain or clean it because of the expense. But it's really something easy. You do have to buy some equipment to make it a lot easier. People talk about walking your motorcycle to move the chain around, but I think $40 for a cheap stand um, that could go a long way. That could make your life a lot easier, and it's something you're going to continue to use. Um, Even on Harbor Freight sells the tire rolly things. You could grab one of those and put your motorcycle on that, spin the tire, lube up your chain. Doing oil changes is incredibly easy, especially on bikes. Uh, everything's so small in there that it's pretty quick to grab a wrench and pull out your oil, drop in the new one. If you have a fully faired bike, that's the lifestyle you chose. I mean, it is going to be a little bit more complicated taking off all the fairings versus a naked bike that probably doesn't have a fairing down there. If it does have a small belly pan, probably a few bolts to take it out, nothing too complex. Uh, I know I've had a few friends that have fully faired bikes, and they always complain about what a pain in the butt it could be to take them off and then realign and reinstall. You made that choice when you bought your bike. Uh, but those are the small things that you could learn, and they are going to be nerve-wracking at first because you might think you're doing it wrong, but we live in the 21st century. There's a plethora of YouTube videos that walk you through it. uh, it's kind of the same stuff. Once you find your drain bolt and where your oil filter is, pretty easy to unscrew, and then you just buy your oil wherever you source it, whether it be auto parts store, online, dealership. uh, However, no hate to the dealerships. I love all the dealerships I worked with, but they do tend to have more expensive things. So you could source it from different places where it'll be a lot cheaper. If you have the means to support your local dealerships, please do. But for us poor boys and girls, squidlets, uh, We got to find a bargain. Uh, but outside of that, that's you got to learn those small basics, the very basic things of owning a motorcycle, and that could curb your expense by so much. I mean, we're talking, instead of having to pay someone for an oil change, where maybe it's going to be one labor hour, and that's going to be $150. Sometimes they do deals for oil changes where they'll charge you $100 for the oil change on top of the material. All you have to pay for if you do it yourself is going to be the material. And oil, you're talking about $10 to $15 a quart. If you get something more expensive, you're probably looking at 15 to 25. And then your oil filter tends to be $15. Cleaning up your chain, you're probably looking at a $30 initial investment, and that'll probably last you the entire season and then some. You tend to go through cleaner a lot quicker than you do the lubricant. You probably need a brush. I have one of those C brushes that people use for the chain, but you can use an old toothbrush. I was a little paranoid about using non-chain specific cleaners, but again, they kind of expensive. The cheaper one I would buy, I was still looking at about $15 a can, and I probably go through 2 cans a season. Grant you, compared to my friends, I was a lot better with cleaning my chain a lot more regularly. Not a lot of people do, and you don't have to unless you really see a lot of grime. I just like the look of a clean chain. But I started using kerosene. Kerosene's the main active ingredient for most cleaners, and some of the older manuals would recommend using kerosene. I think they moved away once you started getting all these brand deals, and you get a KTM, they're probably going to tell you use a Motorex cleaner. So you have all these different brand deals that motorcycles will recommend to use their particular products. Something else that you probably want to learn to do, and again, this is why, I mentioned that Harbor Freight roller, but I would really push you to make that initial investment to get a rear stand, is adjusting your chain. Adjusting your chain is a huge undertaking for a brand new rider. I know it sounds scary. You might think it's too loose and it's going to pop off the sprocket. You might think it's too tight and it's going to snap off. And I've been there. It's scary. You don't know if it's too loose. You're texting your friends a video, shaking it up, looking up videos, asking people to shake up. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be a little scary the first few times. You're just going to have to trust. Pay attention to what those videos are telling you to look for, where to measure your distance. But it is something that becomes a little bit more intuitive. Loosening up your rear sprocket, depending what adjustment system you have on your bike, you'll be able to move it back and forth. You'll know what to look for. As everyone says, it's better to be on the side of loose than it is on the side of tight. But over time, it's something you're going to develop to realize, oh, my chain's a little loose, because when I accelerate, I feel that shake and I feel that jolt. And it might sound like gibberish to you now, but just you wait. In a couple months, when you've been riding your bike for a while, you're going to learn what that feels like. Any small change in your bike, it's something that it's going to become very intuitive to you. And which leads me to something else, is be very patient with yourself. Learning how to ride a motorcycle takes time. I know a lot of us, particularly young males, you think you could jump on these bikes and be an amazing rider instantly, but keep that ego in check. That's what makes us go down. That's what knocks us over. Give yourself time. Be patient with yourself. Learn the basics. I'm a huge advocate. Start off in a small motorcycle. Get a small displacement motorcycle, something around the 40 horsepower range, 40 to 50 horsepower range. Consider yourself lucky. I mean, we're already spoiled. Most people in the world are running a 125, 150, and I'm talking most people just by the huge skew that we have with people in India, the Philippines, Latin America. They're riding at a 125, 150. They think they're gods when they're riding a 250. So we're very fortunate that we've shifted from this 250cc class to this 400, 500cc class that's around the 40s, mid 40s to high 40s horsepower. So start off with something like that. If you're a heavier person, that's another conversation that we could have about maybe starting off on something a little bit larger. But learn the fundamentals. Don't push yourself too much. We try to run before we know how to walk, and it's very difficult because riding a motorcycle in a straight line is incredibly easy. I'm sure I could put my mom on my motorcycle and she could probably go 100. But when it comes down to braking, when it comes down to setting yourself up to take a sweeping turn, that's kind of where we fail. So you got to be really patient when it comes to learning. Be very patient with your friends, or you know, we all have friends. They'll tease you, they'll poke fun at you, and you'll try to prove them wrong. It's all good love. I really don't. I truly believe they don't mind waiting for you when you take that extra 6-7 minutes to catch up at the end of the route. Just take it slow. Don't let your friends tease get to your head and you try to go fast. Because, outside of expense, you having your first accidents, that's kind of a career stopper for a lot of people. So you got to be careful there.